Hello, everyone. This is Diane Smith. Welcome to another session on MYP sponsored by the IB Mid-Atlantic States Association. I had a little bit of a glitch in recording the original Zoom session, so this is a re-recording. And so we won't have all the interaction with the participants and the co-hosts, but I hope it's helpful anyway. In this session, we're going to take a deep dive into the Building Quality Curriculum Service and try to clarify that process and make it seem a little less mysterious. So first of all, I think it's important to recognize up front that many teachers and coordinators might feel nervous about submitting units to BQC. One of the most basic reasons for nervousness might be a worry that their units will be judged. And most likely they've put a lot of time and effort into the units, and they might be worried that they will come back with a so-called low review. Deeper than that, it might come down to a worry that they might be judged as a teacher or as a coordinator. They might wonder if their principal or head of school might think poorly of them or hold the results of the review against them in some way, which, by the way, should not be happening. And there might be a fear for teachers that their school's whole MYP evaluation might be resting on the quality of their units. Again, not true, and it's helpful to remember that the Building Quality Curriculum is a service to help the schools move forward. It is not a judgment or something that will be used negatively against them in their self-study or in their evaluation visit. So Marie Curie said, "Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. And now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less." And I think this quote might apply to participating in the Building Quality Curriculum Service as well. So let's just take a brief look at what BQC feedback is not and what it actually is, so that some of those fears might be alleviated. As we all know, a unit plan can never fully represent what goes on in the classroom. So it's important to remember that BQC feedback is not the IB's judgment of a school's taught curriculum. BQC feedback may have little or nothing to do with how effective or ineffective the teaching and learning that goes on in the classroom is. What BQC feedback actually is a summary of the reviewer's understanding of the evidence that is provided in the written curriculum in that particular unit plan. This is an important distinction because everyone needs to remember that the quality of a school's MYP is much, much more than what might or might not be evident in the school's unit plans. Unit plans are important, but it's not the only thing that's important, and we'll see why BQC feedback might be somewhat limited in its ability to give you feedback on your curriculum as a whole. So BQC feedback is also not a grade for a unit plan. However, there are number symbols included in the feedback, so when numbers are involved, they can sometimes feel like grades. We'll get more into what the numbers mean and don't mean in a bit, but for now, the most important part of the feedback report are the suggestions for further development provided in the comments. As noted previously, there may be an idea out there that beginning levels in BQC feedback might be a reason for possibly failing the MYP or failing their evaluation, but rest assured this is not the case. The feedback is considered as information that the school should use to further develop their program. What an evaluation team is looking for is that the MYP team has considered the feedback and are taking steps to address any areas of unit planning that may need further development. The reason for this is that the quality and thoroughness of the school's written curriculum is what can provide the foundation for the ongoing development and sustainability of the school's program. It helps teachers really think through and document how the core elements of MYP philosophy and pedagogy will be integrated into the teaching and learning in their units. So clearly documenting as much as possible in the written curriculum can create a legacy of program sustainability that can inform the school's future MYP teachers of a clear process of program development. We've all probably seen new teachers come into a school, and perhaps there aren't as thorough unit plans as could be helpful for that teacher, and they really struggle. If there was a foundation of very, very clear, high-quality unit planning, the school's program could continue fairly seamlessly no matter what teachers involved in teaching the class. Of course, there's going to be tweaks and differences in their style and maybe the whole way that they present the material, but at least they have a foundation to start with. So we'll look at a few ideas for really optimizing the process of unit plan development and using the BQC feedback more towards the end of this session. But for now, let's look at the basics of the BQC service. We're going to go fairly quickly through these logistics, but you don't need to remember it. We're going to be able to find all that information on ibo.org. So who is BQC for? First of all, it's for schools that do not participate in e-assessments. Those schools must submit units to the BQC service as part of their self-study in preparation for MYP evaluation. It's also for schools who might voluntarily choose to submit units anytime in order to get feedback and guidance. Keep in mind that there is a maximum number of units that BQC can process in any review session, so priority is given to schools who are required to submit units for evaluation. And the number of units that a school can voluntarily submit may depend on availability in a particular session. If the BQC submission is part of the self-study, the school needs to submit 18 units. 2 units per subject group, and 2 interdisciplinary units. Keep in mind that the interdisciplinary units submitted to BQC need to only involve 2 subjects or disciplines. Other requirements are that there needs to be at least 1 unit from each MYP year level, the units need to have been taught, and all sections of the unit plans should be completed. We do see quite a few units actually that maybe haven't been fully taught. They're in the middle, and so they haven't provided the after teaching reflection. And some unit plans are submitted with blank sections. However, that's not optimal, and you will get feedback about that, and the visiting team will want to see what has been done on those units to address the incomplete parts. So just basically, they do need to have been taught, and all sections of the unit plan should be completed. A self-evaluation summary and descriptions of the teaching context for the unit also need to be provided for each submitted unit. The self-evaluation is based on the descriptors in MYP evaluating MYP unit plans, and there are 2 tables provided at the end of that publication, one for the self-evaluation summary and one in which the teaching context can be described. Remember that there is a separate evaluation guide for interdisciplinary units, which includes a different self-evaluation template. This includes all of the sections that are required in an interdisciplinary unit, so it's not possible to do a complete self-evaluation of an IDU using the single subject self-evaluation form. So just remember there's a separate guide and a separate form that you need to use for the IDUs. So a bit more basic information. There are 3 BQC sessions per year, and you can find that general information about the timelines of the sessions and the time frames for submitting units to the BQC on ibo.org. No need to log in. You can just do a search of MYP Building Quality Curriculum in the search bar, and that page will come up. I'm also including a link to that in our resources folder, so you'll be able to find it there as well. And 15 to 18 months prior to the start of your school's evaluation year, the IB will officially communicate with the school's MYP coordinator about the program evaluation dates and the self-study timeline. Just basically as an overview, again, you can find this chart on ibo.org, but as an overview, Session 1 takes place between late February and early April, Session 2 in late June to early August, and Session 3 in late October to mid-December. Once the IB lets you know when your evaluation visit is and the date by which your self-study must be submitted, you will know which BQC session is the last possible session that it is possible to register for in time for the feedback to be included in your self-study submissions. You'll also know the date that registration opens for that session. There is a 2-month window to register for each session, but keep in mind that, as I said earlier, registration is prioritized for participation by schools with the most pressing evaluation timelines, and sessions tend to close out when capacity is reached. So if you need or are interested in a particular session, I would suggest registering right when the registration window opens. You'll then be able to plan your timeline for submitting your unit plans and evaluations. So remember, when you register, you don't have to have your units ready. You still have a few months to get those organized and as complete as possible. And you can plan on when you're going to be receiving your unit feedback in order to start those collaborative meetings in which your teachers will start using the feedback to make any needed adjustments to the school's unit plans. Again, this table can be accessed on the IBO website, so no need to frantically take down those dates. But to help you envision the timeline, let's look at an example. Here's a brief overview of the process from the perspective of a school that will have its evaluation visit sometime in the fall of 2022. So not next school year, but the following one. This is for Northern Hemisphere schools and some Southern Hemisphere schools with these school year dates, but it's just an example. And since evaluation visits occur every 5 years, this timeline would most likely apply to schools that were authorized or had their last school visit around the fall of 2017. So here we are in May of 2021, and the self-study is coming up during the next school year. In this timeline, the self-study submission deadline would be on or after March 1st and at least 4 months prior to the evaluation visit. So IB will let you know when your self-study submission deadline is, but you can guesstimate once you know when your evaluation visit will be. Sort of backed up from there at least 4 months, and then possibly a little bit longer. On this example, the last BQC session that a school could register for would be BQC 2021 Session 3. So that's this coming school year, next school year, during November and December. Registration for that session opens on June 5th. That's 1 month from now. So if your evaluation visit is in the fall of 2022, you're going to be registering for BQC in about a month, on June 5th. So this school would submit their unit plans between early September and late October, and then get their feedback in early January. So in this scenario, the school would have from early January, when they get their feedback, until the site visit date to use the BQC feedback to revise their units. If the school evaluation visit happens to be after the fall of 2022, let's just say in the fall of 2023, that school may want to consider submitting their units to a BQC session prior to the last possible session, so that they will have more time to use the feedback to further develop their unit plans before the evaluation visit. So in this example, remember that BQC feedback reports are valid for the evaluation visit within 24 months of submitting the self-study. So in this example, in the case of a visit of fall of 2023, there are 3 sessions prior to the last possible session, so in total there's 4 sessions, that would provide valid feedback that would still count for your evaluation visit. So now let's look at what's involved in the BQC process so that you can picture what happens from behind the scenes. So the process involves 5 stages, and we'll look at each stage in more detail. But as an overview, first, schools submit their units. BQC reviewers are assigned units. There's a 3-layer review process. The BQC feedback and summary reports are returned to the school. And then the school has 1 month to ask clarifying questions. So the first official step is the school submitting their unit plans. Then the reviewers are assigned the units, usually between 6 and 12 units each. A few things to know about the reviewers are that they are IB Educator Network members, so they've been through that training. They have a minimum of 3 years experience in the subject group. They have successfully qualified for and completed BQC reviewer training. They are supervised by a subject group senior reviewer, and they are supported by a resource bank of sample feedback comments. Then, once reviewers are assigned units, there's a 3-layer review process. First, each reviewer reviews his or her assigned units. They provide feedback comments and indicate a beginning, using, or sharing level for each section of the unit plan. Let's look at that process in a little more detail. Reviewers will consider the school's self-evaluation and the details provided in the description of the unit's context. And remember when you're filling this out that the audience for this is the reviewer. You're doing all you possibly can to help them understand more about the unit, where it happens in the sequence, what might be coming before it or after it, why it's maybe selected to implement in that school setting. This sometimes for me has more information about the unit than I can glean from the unit plan itself. So be sure to fill that out fully. Then the reviewer will read through the entire unit plan and try to understand the overall purpose, content, and assessment in the unit. They want to get a general idea of what that unit is about. So once the reviewer has a basic understanding of the unit plan as a whole, he or she will then consider each required element of unit planning in terms of the descriptors provided in evaluating MYP unit plans. And of course, evaluating MYP interdisciplinary unit plans if it's an IDU. So a question was submitted as part of the registration for this session about which documents the feedback comments are based on. And these are the 2 publications that were developed for this purpose. I'll get into how the other types of resources that reviewers use, but basically these are the 2 publications that all, at least numeric assessments, the beginning using sharing, are based on these 2, the descriptors in these 2 documents. There's those 3 columns. First, there's a beginning developing column. And these descriptors indicate that this session may require substantial revision, and it may benefit from providing greater detail or clarity in its descriptions. Then there's a using level, and these descriptors indicate that that section of the unit plan demonstrates basic confidence in the planning and documenting of the unit, but it may need additional elements or more detail or more clarification. And a sharing level. A sharing level indicates that the section provides a model of good practice, and it could be used to inspire other teachers and schools in their unit planning. So the reviewers consider the descriptors, and they note what they find in something called a feedback report. There's 2 parts in the report. First, there are the feedback comments, and I again want to emphasize that these comments are the most important part of the feedback to consider. In that section, the reviewer briefly identifies what he or she perceives to be objectively evident in the unit plan. And the reason that they do this description, sometimes I hear back from teachers that it sounds so stilted or awkward that they're repeating back what is in your unit. But the reason they do that is so that you know what they're basing their comments on. So it's possible that they missed something or they misunderstood something, and so when they describe, this is what I see, this is what's evident in the unit plan, you'll be able to know what they're basing their subsequent comments on. Then they note the strengths, and these are the elements that align with the using or sharing level descriptors. After the strengths are noted, suggestions are made to note elements that would benefit from further development in order to more clearly demonstrate the sharing level descriptors. For support, reviewers have access to a set of example comments that they can use as a basis for their own comments. These examples help to maintain the consistency between reviewers in the feedback provided. It's also why the comments sometimes might feel generic or repetitive across feedback reports. But having some repetition is better than having wildly different interpretations of MYP unit planning feedback given by different reviewers. So those sample comments can be very helpful in having consistency. For any guidance provided regarding possible steps for improving the unit, reviewers also draw on other publications, such as the subject group guides, the further guidance documents, and possibly other IB-created resources, such as the MYP unit planning videos and MYP workshop guidance. After the comments have been provided, the reviewer needs to indicate a summary feedback level. Some sections simply are or are not present in every unit plan, so NA, not applicable in the grayed out areas, is pre-entered into those sections of the report. For example, the number of teaching hours, key concept, related concepts, global context and exploration, and the subject group objectives. For all other sections, the reviewer needs to indicate an X in either the beginning, using, or sharing column. These columns correspond to the columns of the descriptors in evaluating MYP unit plans. If a section of a submitted unit plan is blank or does not include enough information for the reviewer to even make a determination, the reviewer indicates no evidence or not enough evidence in those columns. It's helpful to keep in mind that the evidence in a unit plan often reflects different levels of implementation. So determining a single level is sometimes challenging for the reviewer, just like it would be for teachers. For example, let's say that the reviewer has included feedback comments that recognize the strength in a statement of inquiry. It's transferable, it uses student-friendly language that expresses an interesting, engaging idea. So the reviewer has noted that those strengths, and he or she has also noted that the statement needs to more clearly include the unit's key concept, related concepts, and global context exploration. So what is the best fit level? It is not based on majority rules. So even though there are more descriptors from the using level that are evident, the most foundational part of the statement of inquiry is not evident. So the reviewer needs to use professional judgment to determine which level is most applicable. If we look at the description of the statement of inquiry provided in the document, the primary characteristic is that it needs to express a conceptual understanding, which is a meaningful relationship between a clearly evident key and related concept, set in a specific context. More specifically, as we can read in the sharing and using levels, it needs to be set in a global context exploration. So remember that the key and related concept can be included explicitly in the statement of inquiry, or one or both, or any of the concepts can be represented in the statement through clearly representative words or phrases. So you can make some customization there in the words you use in the statement of inquiry so it doesn't sound awkward. Also remember that the global context exploration is fully customizable. You don't have to just choose those words or phrases. In the examples provided in MYP from Principles into Practice, you can customize the description the word, words, or phrase that you use to describe the global context exploration. So that can provide some more flexibility so that your statement of inquiry doesn't just sound like a mechanical combination of the key concept, related concept, and global context. Since the most important element of the statement of inquiry is not evident that it's a conceptual understanding set in a global context exploration, a beginning level would probably be indicated in this case. We could probably have long discussions about developing a meaningful statement of inquiry, and that could be a whole other few sessions. But in terms of BQC feedback, remember that a beginning level does not necessarily indicate that all of the descriptors in that column apply. There could be one or more using level descriptors that also apply, or even a sharing level descriptor. The comments would recognize those strengths, and therefore, again, it's critical to remember that the comments contain more guidance than the holistic numeric level. But thinking about those levels, let's just think about what a 1 or beginning developing level might mean in a feedback report, because it can sometimes be a letdown to see a 1. Even if you've indicated that level in your own self-evaluation, it can still feel kind of uncomfortable. So let's look at some of the many things that a 1 or beginning developing level could mean. First of all, it might mean that the reviewer might not have been able to actually find the evidence of the using or sharing level descriptors anywhere in the unit plan. Maybe the evidence was implied somewhere in the unit plan, but the description didn't make it clear enough for the reviewer to recognize it. Or it's possible that the reviewer misread or misunderstood what was included in the unit plan. Or something about the unit planner template itself made it hard for the reviewer to find that information. Maybe it also made it hard for the teacher to complete it, but in terms of BQC, whether it's a commercially made digital template or a school-based planner format, it might not easily facilitate demonstrating the using or sharing descriptors. Or perhaps the guidance for each section does not support the expectations of evaluating MYP unit plan descriptors. Oftentimes, I can look at the guidance provided by the school in each section, and I can tell, oh, okay, the teacher is trying to follow that guidance, but unfortunately that guidance doesn't help them demonstrate the using or sharing level descriptors. Another reason that's very common is that the unit plan might just need more details added. Sometimes a teacher might provide clear and thorough details in separately linked documents. This is sometimes the case in the description of the learning process or the resources, but keep in mind that reviewers can only base their evaluation on what is in the body of the submitted unit plan. That's part of the instructions to the coordinator when they're gathering their units, that all information that they want the reviewer to consider needs to be in the unit plan itself. Or finally, a beginning developing level could mean that whatever was written in the unit plan actually does demonstrate a beginning or developing level, and that is an area that needs to be focused on and further developed. After the reviewer reviews the unit, the next layers of review occur. A senior reviewer reviews the comments and levels for accuracy and understandability, and engages the reviewer in a discussion about any changes or additions or deletions that may be needed. Once they come to a consensus, the review is finalized and is now ready for the school reviewers. This is the third layer in the review process. The school reviewer reviews all of a school's BQC feedback reports, looks for common strengths and common areas for further development, and provides a summary report. This can be really helpful for the coordinator to be able to see where the strengths that the whole MYP team that submitted units has in common and where the areas of further development are. The fourth step in the process is when the feedback documents are returned to the school. The school then has 1 month to ask clarification questions, and the reviewer or senior reviewer responds to those questions. We're going to consider a few of the questions that were submitted as part of registration for this session. The topics were: people were hoping to find tips for reviewing units and how to provide useful feedback to teachers. These were a request from coordinators. So there's going to be another video describing the thinking process that a BQC reviewer goes through, and that might give you some ideas about how to provide feedback. But basically what it is looking at what is evident in the unit plan, looking for strengths as represented in the descriptors in evaluating MYP unit plans, and then providing ideas for things that may be needed for the unit to demonstrate the sharing level descriptors. Some of the original participants in this session had some great ideas for using MYP meetings to collaboratively review units, maybe at first all together so you're all seeing the same process, then in maybe subject group teams, helping the whole subject strengthen their continuum of unit plans, or a great idea was in pairs of teachers from different subjects who may be able to help their partner see things about a unit in a more objective way. Another request was for tools and protocols for evaluating units, curriculum, and perhaps auditing a full course, maybe meaning looking at all of the units across, for instance, individuals and societies. And I'm going to include a few protocols in the resources folder, which I will provide a link to on the IBMA website and also on my YouTube channel underneath the video. The annual unit development plan. So this would really depend. The coordinator will make a unit development plan in response to the needs of separate teachers and subject group departments. And then how to prepare for BQC. So that's what we're going to look at more closely right here. So the self-study process is pretty hectic. It's very full. So there might be a tendency to view the BQC process as just one more tick box in a long list of to-do items. Just get it done, collect and submit the units, and hand back the feedback reports. But this is really a low bar for the potential of this process. So to raise the bar, it's really important to consider what makes the process worthwhile is what happens in the school before and after BQC. Even the very first process of selecting units that will be submitted can be very powerful for a subject team. And I would suggest turning this over to the subject group team right away. It's owning the process, owning the units that are selected, owning why they are selecting them. The buy-in is so much greater if they've decided on their own which units to submit. So the team will also, while they're sharing what their units are about and describing it to each other so they can decide which ones to pick, they will learn more about the continuum of content and process, and they can have really valuable discussions about what they want to find out about unit planning through BQC. They might want to consider, do they want to submit a very successful unit to see if they've adequately represented it in the unit plan? Or do they want to submit a unit that's been a challenge? They've really tried to develop it, and they really want to get feedback in order to make it more effective. There may also be teachers on the team who very much want to submit their units, maybe a stellar unit, or maybe one that they've really struggled with. And it would be most productive as well as most enjoyable for all involved if the authors of the units are open-minded, confident, and very open and willing to consider changes to their units. They can be a really good role model for the rest of the department. To track the units that are decided upon, this is what I did. I shared a table with the MYP team so that we could all see where the gaps were and what year levels were still available. So in this example, it shows that arts, language acquisition, sciences, and IDUs have already submitted the 2 units. They've picked those. And that MYP 1 through 4 already have 3 units each. For BQC, the only requirement related to year levels is that there needs to be at least one unit plan from each year level of the MYP that's taught in your program. But because I wanted there to be balance in the year levels so that each year level could also look across the unit plans submitted, they'd have similar numbers to look at, I ended up setting parameters of at least 3 and not more than 4 units in each year level. Another requirement to remember is that, as I already mentioned, any IDU submitted must only have 2 subjects or disciplines participating in the unit. So once the units are selected, the 2 units from each subject group and the 2 IDUs, the subject group teams could meet to review the MYP unit plan requirements and guidance. This is where they're getting oriented, reoriented, refreshed in their understanding of what is it that goes into MYP unit plan. They can review the MYP unit planning videos that are available on the Program Resource Center. They can review the descriptors in evaluating MYP unit plans, and the teams involved in the 2 IDUs would need to meet as well and review evaluating MYP interdisciplinary unit plans. I also have some videos on interdisciplinary unit planning on my YouTube channel that you may want to check out, or the people involved in the IDUs. And in the resource folder, you will have access to, through the IBMA website or linked below this video on my YouTube channel, there will be links and ideas for in-school PD protocols around collaborative evaluation of units. And then the subject group teams and the IDU teams could have a number of meetings or a retreat day to review the selected units based on what they have now refreshed their understanding of what needs to be in them. They could use a process that's similar to what BQC unit reviewers do. Find evidence of the descriptors and brainstorm ideas for revising the units to align more closely with the sharing level descriptors. Then the unit authors, the original authors, could implement the suggestions and the team could meet again so that they can review the new version of the unit plan and collaboratively complete the self-evaluation. It's usually the authors who complete the context of the unit. So here we are at the point when the coordinator submits the units. And now we switch to after the school has received their BQC feedback reports. Once the school receives the feedback reports, the subject group teams and coordinator could meet again to discuss the feedback. And this is really important to know. You're going to look at what you agree with, and teachers will really want to express what they disagree with. And rest assured that there is a high likelihood that some teachers, and you maybe even as a coordinator, will disagree with at least some of the 1, 2, 3 levels. That's fine. You know way more about the unit than the reviewers could ever glean from the unit plan. So the most important thing to do is to examine the feedback comments and identify what you agree with and disagree with, and what questions you might have. For the points you agree with, make notes of any areas for future development. And for the points you disagree with, clarify why. What evidence is in the unit plan that the reviewer may have missed? Or what is actually in the unit as it's implemented in the taught curriculum, but may be less clearly stated in the unit plan and might need to be more clearly expressed. Questions in general could be noted, and different professional development could be accessed, or resources. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, specific questions. But major questions about things in the report, the coordinator can return them during the clarification period. So the subject group teams can take all of that information that the agreements, disagreements, and create an action plan. That's a timeline for revising not only the submitted units, but also any other units that share the same areas of needed development. The coordinator will also consider the summary of the school review, What were the common areas of strength? What were the common areas of needed growth? And what is your PD plan for strengthening those areas? These points will be really important and even enjoyable to discuss with the visiting team. Then that action plan can be started with the subject group teams meeting to collaboratively make unit revisions. The collaborative unit updating process can continue with the authors by themselves and in bouncing ideas off of the subject group team. And prior to the evaluation team visit, the subject group teams can meet again to just clarify the process they went through to revise their units, using the BQC feedback and evaluating MYP unit plans. Because it's really common for teams to get into meetings with the evaluation visit team and just feel too nervous and kind of forget what they actually did. So when they have gone through this whole process together during the evaluation visit, some subject group teams will be very well versed in unit planning and the process they went through, and they can feel confident, even excited about discussing their process with the team. That's a really much more enjoyable feeling than being caught unprepared to authentically discuss unit planning and MYP pedagogy with the site visit team. So just to ease some stress, this before and after BQC process can be really helpful. So I'm going to stop this recording now and do a different recording where I go through an entire unit review process on an arts unit that was really generously contributed by an IBMA MYP coordinator. And so you'll be able to see how a BQC review process might go, the thinking process, what a reviewer might be looking for, what they can't find, how they make decisions. So I really encourage you to keep an eye out for that video as well. And we're just going to end right here. If you have any further questions, you can find me at dianempsmith@gmail.com. So thanks so much and take care.